Welcome to another episode of They've Got Now. I am really excited to be joined today by someone who I have loved getting to watch come up through the ranks, get to know a little bit over the last year, and get to know more today. That's Morgan Paige, the new associate head coach over at Kansas University, I should say. Morgan, first and foremost, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. We're getting about done with our summer. Like it's been a grind. But finishing the last week of workouts, things will slow down for us a little bit in August where we get to breathe and reset before everything starts. But it's been good. It's been crazy. It's gone really fast. I think this is the fastest summer I've ever been a part of. But things are going well down in Lawrence.
Yeah, no, it's kind of exciting because exciting depending on how you're viewing it, but like feels like we just get more and more events crammed into each summer, and especially with this being an Olympic year and like every single
Mhm.
FIBA thing is hitting, like there pretty much is just like some kind of tournament you have to have eyes on every four days. So it's been especially like I get to just watch it from my house. You're
Yeah,
out, you have
great.
to
You get
be
to
at
watch multiple
everything.
screens.
So yeah,
Uh, I
I
envy that.
I don't envy it. But yeah, like we were saying before you got on, like shoot, we're like 7 days from August, not even, which
Yes.
is like just jarring to think about. But I want to ask first and foremost, like you got the promotion. It's
Mhm.
got to be pretty cool to read that next to your name. And we're gonna go through your whole journey as a coach, but like kind of being able to sit here and be like, I'm the associate head coach at frickin' Kansas. Like, what does that kind of feel
Freaking
like?
kid.
Have you been able to
Yeah.
kind of let that sit in a little bit?
I would tell you that really hasn't been any downtime because you finish your season, you're in portal season, you finish portal season, you're in summer session, you start high school July recruiting. Like it's been constant for the last couple months, which is really funny because our sport has really shifted. I think there's been a lot of talk of like when we're the most busy. And it used to be like fall visits before signing day. Like there's a lot of commotion, there's a lot of things going on. But I would say that the last 3 months of the spring, like you're finishing your season, if you're running deep into the tournament, you're in March, and then all of a sudden the portal opens. So you're doing recruiting while you're still finishing a season. So there's really no downtime until you start your like fall sports, fall like going back to school, which like again sounds backwards, but things are starting to slow down just a little bit. So I'll probably take some time, and obviously I work for amazing coach in Coach Brandon, and he's been an awesome mentor for me. But even just us like establishing what my new responsibilities are going to be, what that looks like on a day-to-day basis, really into this fall we haven't even had time to adjust because we've been like,
Mhm.
okay, we're doing this, we're on the road. So it's been cool, and obviously a lot of people have come up to me and I've gotten to talk about it, but it really doesn't feel super surreal until I get a little bit of time to set with it.
Yeah, no, I can imagine because exactly what you're saying. Like everything's just hitting, all at the same time, so it can be a lot. But I want to start too. Obviously, like where you're at now, but played at UW, yeah, UW, the UW of the Midwest,
Mhm.
University of Wisconsin, which it's going to be
Yes.
exciting. It's gone underrated, but like we get the actual battle of UW this year. Who gets to own UW? Is it Wisconsin
Yeah.
or is it Washington? So can't wait.
I don't
Um,
know. I'm from the Midwest. I've
yeah,
always lived in the Midwest. So like when I hear UW, you know it's Wisconsin. And when you're in the West Coast, you know it's Washington. So like to me, it's like it's USC. Like who's USC? Like you'll hear if you're in like SEC country, like South Carolina's SC, and you're like, no, but it's USC, it's Southern Cal. Like
yeah,
to me, it's they each have their own world that they can operate in, and it'll be curious because again, like the conference realignment, you don't think about that. Like, oh yeah, now we
yeah.
have two of them in one conference, and as a Big Ten girly, it's really hard to wrap my head around. Like, just like have known the conference forever and growing up in it, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Or
we've come away from Legends and what was the second conference?
I don't
Legends
even
and
know. That was
I
my
can't remember.
senior year of
It was
I
wild.
graduated and they added Rutgers in Maryland the year after. So I
Yeah,
never like had to experience that. Um, thank God. I say thank God, like Maryland came in and like ran the league the
yeah,
first couple of years. But yeah, this is just we're in uncharted waters. it's going to be really curious to see. And like, how do you even use regular season conference championships anymore? What does that look like? You don't play everybody. Like, it's just going to be curious.
Yeah, it's going to be very different. I am so excited to see these travel schedules pop up because, ooh, Lord, I'm glad I'm not like Stanford or Cal. But that's, that's a
Yeah, but
whole
you
other
could be
conversation.
Kansas. You could be Kansas, where we're directly right in the middle of the country. So no matter what, if we're going East Coast, West Coast, it's 2 hours, maybe
Have to
2:20
go
is our
everywhere.
longest flight. It doesn't affect us
Yeah.
as much as some other places. So I'm like, yes, this is great.
Yeah,
We'll always be able to get home. Don't have to really worry. It's like one time zone each way. I'm cool. I'm cool with it.
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when you're in 1,000 point score, you get to be pretty cool with anything. Obviously, 2013, third team All Big Ten. Um, so, like you mentioned, in terms of coming up in the Midwest, going to Wisconsin, I want to transition from that because it seems like I know, like going back through past interviews you've had, you weren't always set on being a coach. I know your mom and your dad both coached you extensively growing up. When
Mhm.
did it kind of first click for you? Like, this is something I actually want to do.
Yeah, I was so anti-coach. Like, I did not
Yeah.
want to do it. I was very much, I'd like to go do this. I'd like to, like, I wanted to write. My mom's an English teacher, like, very much, like, can write, read, do all those types of things. Love doing that kind of like almost journalism. That was like my world. Like, I really enjoyed that. Um, but my junior, senior year, I had the opportunity. I say opportunity. I look at it as a positive. So I went through a coaching change during my career.
Hmm.
So being um, in a position where I had several different coaches, in terms of I had two head coaches, but I also had multiple position coaches over my 4 year time, and just getting different coaching, different types of people interaction, different teachings of the game. I think by the time I got to my senior year, I spent obviously a ton of time with my position coach, who was like, why do you not, like, you watch film like coaches do, like, why do you not want to try? Like, why are you not, why are you so against it? So I let her kind of talk me into at least thinking about being a graduate assistant, continuing my degree, but also like, let's like see if you like being on the court. Let's see if you like the other side. So I played professionally for a year, but my favorite part of my like weekly routine was coaching 11 and 12-year olds that can barely speak
Yeah.
English. And it was the basketball. Like, that was more exciting than practice. That was more exciting than games. And then it's like, well, about 3 months in, I could keep playing. That was obviously something I was able to do, but to me, it felt like, well, if I really want to do something and like jump 2 feet in, I might as well start and get in and see what that looks like. So yeah, it was like really a catch 22 moment. Like, it was like I really didn't want to, and it was like 2 weeks, a 2 week span of okay, maybe like in like the end of season, like before a Big Ten tournament. Like, I remember it being like super late in my senior year, and just feeling, okay, you know what? I'll think about it.
Yeah.
And now look at me. Like, this is just kind of, and
Yeah.
I say that, and it's like my brother was the same way. Like, we both were like, we don't want to coach. And now we both coach.
And look, we're coaches now. It's funny the way that stuff works out. Yeah, it's hilarious because no, first off, you played what, Romania or where?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's what I
I'm
thought.
in Romania, and like it was a good league. Like, we had multiple WNBA players. Like, it was good. I just like, I think about the other 10 hours of the day. Like, I was so bored. I'm such a people person. Like, there's only so many things you can do before like language barrier keeps you, or your time, the time away from your normal. So all of a sudden you're starting to stay up 3 or 4 a.m. because everyone back home is awake during those times. Like,
Hmm.
I don't get to talk to anybody until I'm cooking dinner. Like, that, it just was
Yeah.
very, I was not built for it. Whereas like my brother, like I use him as an example because he played professionally. He was over here in the NBA for 2 years, but then he spent 6 years overseas. He's built for it. Like, the man just sleeps, plays videos games, and like goes practice. Like, he doesn't have to do anything else. Like, he's pretty chill, doesn't really like to do other people, like way more like I can just come home and be fine. Like, I'm good. he was built for it. I was not. We're like we're similar, but we're polar opposites in that. Where it's like I need people, and I need to be able to like be stimulated all the time.
Yeah.
If that isn't obvious. I'm a very high energy.
It definitely comes across in a good way. But
So
yeah, no, it's
that
also
to me, like I
yeah,
was like, nope, I'm out. Like I
yeah,
gotta go home. Let me start coaching. So
totally understandable. Also, shout out to your brother. I loved watching him come up when I was in high school. He was so those UNC teams were really fun. I loved watching him
yeah,
play.
yeah,
Um
that's been a topic of contention here the last couple weeks. It's
oh, I can imagine just a little bit. Um
yeah.
So you mentioned becoming a grad assistant, and part of like what I want to dive into with that. First, I mean, obviously at Iowa State, and
Mm,
I love that program, love that staff, love all the people there. That's just a great place for
mhm.
people who are not aware. But like, what was it like going into being a GA? Because I think a lot of people have an idea of like, I'm a graduate assistant, I do this and that. But I think part of what makes college so both cool, but also like a lot is every position can sound the same, but be very different depending on the
Yeah,
program. So what was that like for you coming in and kind of figuring out like and assimilating to what that was going to be?
yeah, for sure. When I talked with Coach Fenley, he had really thought about like, he had males in that position multiple years before. Like, his last 3 had been males in the position, and he's like, "Well, listen, for the most part, it's gonna be video coordinating." Like, they didn't have a video coordinator on staff. That's something we can teach you how to do, but at the same time, like, you're still fresh out, like, we would like you to be on the floor. So, I did play a lot, like, I was I say practice player, but, like, got to play a decent amount, but then also, like, my responsibilities were mostly film, like, super film heavy, and then anything they needed extra with recruiting. Um, that was like kind of what our role evolved into. But what I would say is like you said, like every program does it a little bit different. And I think that he was open to making it more involved for me because of my skill set and knowing that I was a player and knowing that I can interact and kind of give a different perspective, an immediate perspective. Because I was what, 6 months out of
Mhm.
graduating. Like I did one season and I'm walking in with them. So I'm maybe 18 months older than some of them. Grad transfers, some of them are the same age as me. Like it it was able to use things that I was gonna be really, really good at and help them instead of it just being this, like, structured box, which was absolutely amazing. Obviously, he's a Hall of Famer, like, you're getting so much just even by being in the program, but each school does it a little different. I think it has evolved even now, like, that was almost 10 years ago, which is insane.
Yeah,
Like, I think about that all the time, like, I'm going into my 9th season, and I'm like, "What? I've been coaching that long? No, I have not."
yeah,
Then I start doing the math, I'm like, "No, it really has been, like, this is 9, like, this is nuts." Like, absolutely crazy. But I think graduate assistants, especially now, like, it's more hours than it says on the paper. Like, you have to
yeah,
be willing to get outside of your okay, if it's 3 bullet points that you're in charge of, like, you have to be willing to do more. You have to be available to the kids. You have to start learning. If you don't know how to do something, start like mirroring someone. Like I spent a lot of time in Latoya Shaven, Billy Penley, and Shire, like their offices. Like that's how you learn what goes on, how you're if that's what you're gonna try and be, like the best thing to do, like, obviously, I'm in every staff meeting, but if it's recruiting, like, if you're around a recruiting coordinator or somebody that is really, really good in that field, like, the best way to learn is to be in it and, like, even just to watch, shadow, see how things happen, ask questions, and they've been awesome, like, they're my family, like, I love them, they always have been supportive and so great for me anyways, and it's been cool to reconnect because 'cause we're in the same league, but I'm like, "I was only there 10 months." I was there 10 months and he's like, "You're going to get a job. Like,
yeah.
you are like, we are sending you. You're not staying, you're going. We are getting you coaching. You need to be out." So they've been awesome, and supportive in that.
I love that. And like kind of when you look back on that, like obviously, when you look at now the GAs that you guys have brought through Lawrence, like how does that kind of color the way that you approach that, having those people and kind of giving them sort of some of the same stuff that you got when you were coming up like that?
Yeah, I think it's different how every school operates,
Hmm.
but my boss, Brandon, really puts a premium on um, helping those who have already given to your program, right? So our student athletes that have graduated and maybe want to, like, so we have a couple that are playing professionally and they want to get into coaching. They're going to be the first people that have that opportunity to take those positions. And if they're not ready, hey, I'm still playing, like I'm still doing this, then obviously then you get external and you start thinking about, okay, who are people that are going to be really good in these types of positions. But um, for example, we will have a former player in the position this coming year, and I'm really excited because again, I got the opportunity to coach her. She was on one of the first teams when I got here, and she has the ability to be able to do this, right? Like she wants to coach and she doesn't know the level yet, but she's going to learn so much just by being on the other side. My favorite thing, I got asked today by one of our players. So like, what are you guys doing the rest of the day? Well, we had practice at 9 a.m. You think we're just done after practice? She's like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
what are you guys still doing here?" I'm like, it's 12:15. We've got calls, we've got meetings, we've got all kinds of other things. Like basketball is not the only thing we do. So you get a world of different perspectives and like I think the best way to get thrown into the fire is to be in these types of positions, but then you realize like, am I cut out for this or am I not? Like you're gonna know. You'll know in the first 2 months of working in a job like that if it's something you want to pursue or if it's like this level is too big. I need to be a little. Maybe it's like high school. Maybe it's D3. Like maybe it's a different type of role, and that's okay. Like you want to be around the game, you'll find out where you fit really quickly without like losing a ton of time when you're in these situations.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it. I think in terms of the especially like you mentioned in terms of like it has the quote unquote set hours, but dude, no, not at all. Like it's
Yeah,
especially anything at this level of basketball, it's like, dude, no, we're here all the time. That's what we do.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, like you said, it seems like you kind of just like you hit the ground running. You're like, all right, here we are. Let's get into it. And it was funny too, because again, I found a feature from I think it was Des Moines Register from like when you were
Oh,
first there.
probably. Iowa.
Um,
So
yeah, yeah.
let's
And
go.
Bill
I
said,
win.
I think it was like, so it's from like the first week you've been there, and Bill's like, she's gonna be a head coach someday. And you're just about there, which is kind of wild to think about. But
I
like,
know I feel far, but like it's real. Like it's a real thing. It's a real thing that I have to prepare for and plan for. I didn't know if that was something I was gonna wanna do. Like, my favorite things to do are player development and recruit. Like, I loved no way. I like talking to people. I like learning
yeah,
about people. Shocker. Um, but then just, like, being in the gym. Like, those are the 2 things I love the most, and that's not necessarily X's and O's, managing everybody else, budgets. Like, there's so many things that go into running the program, right? Like,
yeah,
people think it's just coaching. It's not just coaching. And now it's NIL, it's revenue share. Like there's so many buckets. There's so many buckets. But I feel like in the last couple of years I've really shifted my mindset and really like evaluating if it's something I really want and if that's something I really want to start preparing myself for. And again, I've been in a situation where I've been able to take more responsibility and really run with it. And I'm fortunate to be in that position here at Kansas. And again, I'm preparing for that next step, but I really love what we've been able to build and like what we're doing. And again, it's preparation in its own way. So yeah, it feel you said like it's close, and I'm like, is it like but
yeah,
also like yeah, it probably is. So just making sure like nobody's ever ready, but being as ready as you can be for something like that
yeah.
is my so
I think that's kind of the wild part. Like, I don't know. I think when I was younger, I used to think like when I don't know, not that I ever like pictured being a head coach or something, but like whenever I like think of like a job, I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, well, like these are like the benchmarks. These are the things that I like, okay, if I get to that point, like I just have this stuff covered. Like I know this stuff. I'm gonna be at this level. And exactly like you're saying, I feel like so much of it is like, no, dude, you just like prepare as much as you can. And when you get there, you figure it out and you
Yeah,
surround yourself with the right people and hope that it works. Like, I hope that it works. Is like, I don't want to make it like that ambiguous. Like, obviously, the right, if you're doing things the right way, there's a lot
yeah.
of stuff that you can do to set yourself up for success. But it's like,
Mhm.
I feel like so much of it is like exactly like you said, like time management, because I think one of the things that I've had to learn most, especially like part of the reason I did not do well as an athlete once I got to the middle of college was because I couldn't understand time management. Like I was so bad at like recognizing like I was like really bad at like overworking myself, and that
Mhm.
like was absolutely killer, and like trying to remember like uh okay, everybody has the same 24 hours and you just have to figure
Yeah.
out how to use it most efficiently. So
Yep.
that's kind of like tailoring to you, like what was kind of the realization for you with that? Because I think one of the things that some people in coaching or just in general can struggle with is like remembering what we're trying to do long term, but we need to be
Mhm.
building towards that every day. Like how
Yeah.
do you kind of keep grounded in that and working towards that? Because I feel like that's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. I think that's a good question. I think that I would say it's more in terms of like you're building towards something every day, but what I would say it's more of how can you establish boundaries for balance?
Mm,
Like you said, like we work constantly. It's a constant thing. Like it's 24/7, it's all year round. How can you be really, really good in the time that you're allowing it to be, but how can you also be a person? Like I'm a basketball coach, but that is not me like as a person. Like, it's what I do, it's not who I am, and so, by doing that and thinking, "Okay, like, these are the tasks, or this is what I wanna get accomplished in the week, and these are the 2 things that are gonna grow me," like, it's like making a list, like, you wanna do, like, check-ins and things, but I also know, like, I've gotten much better in my millennialness of, like, I need to be done. Like at this time, I need to be done. I need to give myself these X hours where I'm not working. Like this is not conducive to be 12 years like it's you're not going to get further. Like you're going to burn out if you don't set like real like I'm going to do anything that is not and I say that and I'm a basketball junkie. So like to me, I am fortunate enough that I've grown up in a house with coaches. So we can watch I can like shut it off. I can watch basketball and be a fan. Like I can be a fan, I can go, I can be in the environment and not think, "Oh my god, this is my job. Oh my gosh, they're running this play." Like I can watch that back on film if I want to go get it. I can be there and I can like live in the moment because I love basketball and not think of it as work. Like, oh, hey, I'm going to stay up at 3 a.m. and watch this. Like, no, no, I'm not. I'm not. I'm gonna catch it on the replay because these are like boundaries that I need to set for myself. Otherwise, what are we doing? Right? Like, if I want to do this 15 years from now, I can't be doing it 40 hours. Like, you just have to really settle that and like be sure that like what you're doing is enough if you set the time allowed for it. But like you have to have some balance. And again, I'm 32. It took me a while to figure that out. Like my young 20s
yeah.
was chaotic. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to burn myself out if I do not establish some like structure." Because again, like I am very much an I like other things. I like to go do things. I like to travel. I like to do other things outside of basketball and coaching basketball and recruiting and yada yada yada. So you just have to make sure like you are feeding yourself, you're putting into your bucket so then you can get out a bigger product later. Um, and that's not even like basketball specific of like getting better at my job, but I can be the best version of myself if I make sure that there's enough of myself every day to be able to keep doing it. If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, that is phenomenal. So I'm gonna try and apply because yeah, it's been a work in progress. I have 5 years to catch up to that, fortunately.
It
But yeah,
happens.
right now
You're
it's
gonna
been
get
like
there.
that's been like the last couple months I've been trying to get better at it. But it's like obviously I'm not in coaching right now, but like in terms of like kind of figuring out like I do a ton of stuff with Sky, so it's like typically the
Mhm.
last couple of years, it's like, all right, well, I was covering the NBA and the W, but also doing college at the same time. So it was like, all right, dude, let's just like,
Woo!
I was watching like 7 or 8 full games a
So
day.
many
So it was like
basketball
trying to
games.
catch up on that. And then I was like, all right, I hit a point, I was like, can't do that anymore because this is like nuts. And I need to like do something outside of that. It's great because you learn a ton.
Mhm.
It's actually really funny. Like one of the best things I ever like got taught was like one of my friends who was a video coordinator in the NBA for a while was like, I asked him like, how do you kind of, how can I learn basketball faster? He's like, you can't. You just have to keep watching and
Have
it'll
to keep
grow.
watching.
And then you think like, I don't know, I'm bad at like putting time into perspective. But like you go back and like, if I looked at this game 3 years ago, I don't see it even like remotely the same as I do now. So stuff like
Mhm.
that. And yeah, I like that. I think in terms of trying to figure that out is still an adventure, but I
Yeah.
appreciate that mindset for sure. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Because
I
if you're
also
not able
think
to,
you,
yeah,
like, have to be aware. Like, the sooner you can become self-aware, the better you're gonna be. Like, I am so much better at life in the mornings. I am a morning person. If I'm going to get anything done that, like, needs real hard brain work, it's gotta be, like, 6 to 9 a.m.
yep,
Like, that's, like, my peak time of, like, "Let's go, we're getting things done," which is not everybody. It's not everybody, but, like, I know that about me, so that means if I'm gonna come in and get something done that I wanna, like, dive into with full like, I'm gonna get up in the morning, I'm gonna do it, and I'll set that time aloud for it, and then, obviously, like, 9 a.m., usually that's about when everybody else needs something from you, is about that time, and then I'm already past it, right? Then you've already established, like, "Hey, that I took myself time, like, that time." Whatever that is, whether it's for my job, professional development, personal, like, that is my time in the morning. My workouts happen in the morning. So, like, that's what I know about me. 2 p.m. and after, I'm awful. I'd rather just be on the phone, like, doing things that don't take a ton of brain power. Like, I can regurgitate information, but, like, PMs are hard. Practice, it's fine. But, like, actual busy work, I'm not the night person. Like, that's not me. So, just knowing that about myself, like, now I had to figure that out, but that's a part of it. Like, you gotta figure out when you are at your best and when you can grow the most.
yeah. No, that makes a ton of sense because I think like so often, the way that not just basketball culture, but I think in general, like American culture is very much like, well, being consistent all the time. Like, dude, that's just not. I used to
It's
think that
not
was a thing.
feasible.
Real. Like you can't do that. So I think that's a great point in terms of finding that because like for me, if I have to write something or do a bigger project, I wake up at 4:30 in the morning and do it
And you
because
do
like
it, you knock
that's
it out.
the easiest time. I can't stay up late. It just doesn't work for me to like I stay up late all the time because that's when I do something for free
Yes,
time. But
yes.
like in terms of like actually doing something with brain power, like hell no. And I'm like, all right, I know my dog's gonna be sleeping till at least 7:30
Yeah,
and I don't have anything else to do. And
yeah,
if I like just drink a Celsius, I'll be great. So like, here we go. So exactly. I love that. That's
yeah.
really that makes a ton of
We would
sense.
laugh because, like, Terry Nooner I worked with Terry Nooner here for 2 years, and he's, like, polar opposite. He
Yeah.
middle of the night, you could call him at 3, he's up, like, he's a night owl, like, he's doing his best work in the middle of the night. I'm like, "How do you do that? Like,
Yeah.
how is that possible?" He's
That
like,
you can't
"I've never
relate
had
to that at
kids,
all.
like,
Yeah.
can't relate. This is the quiet time of the" I was like, "Sure, I'll take your word for it. I'm in bed. Do not text me at 3 AM. Like, I will see it at 6. I will."
Yeah. No, absolutely. Also, shout out to Terry. Excited to see year two at Wichita. Um,
Yes.
definitely. Um,
Nooner.
yeah, I want to transition from that too, because obviously you go to North Dakota State after
Mhm,
Iowa State, and you were
mhm.
one of the youngest full-time assistants in the country. How do you kind of assimilate into that? Because again, like when you're a GA, like it's like okay, so much of like there's stuff that's directed for me. I'm here to learn. But when you're an assistant, it's like okay, I am like yes, there are people that I'm going to learn from and be around, but also you have people coming to you for things. So like, how do you kind of like you're at Wisconsin 2 years ago as a player to now I am like one of the full time assistants
Yeah.
on a program that's building. So like, how do you kind of settle into that a little bit?
Yeah. I say my first boss because I had 2 different bosses at North Dakota State. So Maren Walseth was my first boss, and when she brought me in, she empowered me by saying, "Listen, you're really, really good at skill development. You know what you're talking about on the court. You're gonna be able to train any guard in their position, right? You've played it. That's gonna be easy. It's gonna be the hardest for you to find your voice and be able to like, what does that look like to coach them? So just kind of work through it and kind of figure that out. So I would pride myself in being not afraid to fail. Like, I will put myself out there and make mistakes. Like, that is how you learn. At least that's how I've been taught to just be bold in it. And then you can always make adjustments. You can always figure things out. Like, this didn't work. So let's try something else. Um, but I think with young coaches or people that are just getting into a like an overwhelming situation. Like that was very overwhelming. Those first years, I can't even remember. Like, it was a blur. Like, you're learning so much. You're trying to adjust to being an adult. You're living on your own. Like, now in charge of other people that are now like, okay, there's 4 or 5 kids that like I am in charge of,
Yeah.
and they're now coming to me for XYZ, and I barely do this. Like, this is my first time being my own and paying my own bill, like doing all of those kinds of things. Um, I just think like being a sponge and like being willing to do anything that is asked of you. And then once you're in those situations, like how can you put 2 feet where you're at? Like NDSU was Fargo, North Dakota, right? Like what in the world? I was up there for 5 years, but that athletic department, like I did my best to be at things. You meet people, you get along in the athletic department. We were fortunate enough where all of everybody but football was in one building. So like
Hmm.
you're interacting with all this different sports and staff and admin. Um, and like as a young person that doesn't really know how college athletics works, like having to walk 10 feet and like can ask questions or get mentored by people that have been doing it for years, decades, different places, different experiences was awesome. But yeah, it was like I would say I was like terrified the first 6 months, even though I was like doing it. I was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it. Like I'm out here. They know I can do this. They say I can do this. Um, but it was a lot of like observing, absorbing. I wasn't very like assertive with my voice and just like trying to figure out where I fit and how I wanted to come across and how I wanted to coach. Um, it took a while. Like, again, 18 months, like, I'm only, like, 7 months older than the oldest person on our team, and I'm just like,
Yeah.
"Oh my gosh, this is insane." Like, they're really trusting me with this. But again, like, having bosses that will empower you with your strengths and then grow things that you don't know, like, I've been fortunate in all of my bosses' situations, like, I've been empowered by each and every one of them in different ways to really like, hey, step in this, make this your own. It's yours, run with it. And I think not every place is like that, and not every boss works that way. But I've been really fortunate with my mentors and my bosses that I've worked for that they really let me be myself and they let me figure things out by messing up, but also like lifting me back up when I make a mistake. Like, hey, like you can still do it, just try it a different way type of situation.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I also just shout out in general to NDSU. I know because you worked for Jory Collins his first
Yep.
couple of years too as well, and they just had one of their best years in program history. A
Let's
phenomenal
go, go
team. Yeah.
Bison.
Shout out
I
to the Bison.
have
Oh,
so
you still have, let's
yep,
go. That's
turns
awesome.
up. I
Hell
can't even
yeah.
lie, like those are my people. I
Yeah.
finished my degree there. So I actually have my master's degree from North Dakota State. So I like transferred my credits. So I really can. Like I'm really like I'm an alum. Let's go.
That's awesome. And then yeah, I mean, so when you make the jump to Kansas too, like how do you kind of handle that as well? Because again, like, not that I mean, I think coaching at any level in D1 is like, you know where you're at, but like
Mhm.
it's Kansas. So like how do you kind of when did you know that was gonna happen, or when did you kind of have the inkling that was gonna be a potential thing, and what really sold you on coming to Lawrence?
It was like a 72-hour thing.
Yeah.
Like I didn't have an inkling. I didn't know. Um, Obviously, Jory has worked with Brandon, in the past at Emporia State. They're very close. They won a national championship together, at Emporia State, D2, like, they are very linked. So, I knew that, like, I knew Brandon as Jory's friend, like, before, while I was up there, but he called me on a random it was, like, 8 o'clock on a Tuesday, and Jory doesn't spend a lot of time on phone calls anyway, so when he's calling you, he needs something. Like, it's not like
Yeah.
he's one of those, like, he'll talk to you in person, but he's not really on the phone unless he has to be. So it's like, what could he possibly need? Like, what am I gonna have to go do? Like, he's gonna need something from me. He's like, "What are you doing?" I knew immediately. I was like, "What happened? Like, what? You never asked this. You never
Yeah.
started like this." And he's like, "Oh, I have something for you, blah, blah, blah." And then it was literally like 3 phone calls. Um, and 2 days later, I find out that I'm moving. Like it was a very quick situation and again, super overwhelming. Like I built a house in Fargo. Like I was I had no intention of leaving. We had a plan. We really built, we felt like our recruiting classes were good. Like we were about to really do the thing, honestly, like that they've been doing, which is amazing. Like I love
Hmm.
that. Somebody's like super fan. I'm like, yes, we did it. Um, but it was one of those things where it's like, Jory's like, you can't not, like, I have to put you up for this. Like, you're perfect for what they're looking for, but also like this is what you need to be doing. Like you need this. Like it's time. Which again, it's awesome that your boss like empowers you to do that, but then like to walk into a situation where you have another boss that's also the same way, like they're similar but different in the terms that they're really trying to grow what you want, like as me individually, Morgan, what my plans are, what I my goals are, like he's in full support of that. Like the last three assistant coaches to leave have been head coaching. Like they're head coaching in other places. With Jory at NDSU, Aqua at Lamar, and Terry at Wichita State. Like that that shows that again, like he's really trying to foster that and like make sure you're ready, like when you leave these places. But it was an interesting situation because it was right out of COVID. Um, and it was one of those things where it's like, I'm going to take 2 feet and jump. And we hadn't been successful, but we felt really, really good about who was on our roster. Like a lot of people didn't realize who was still on our roster. And like a group of them were sophomores turning juniors, um, that were like solid, like not something crazy, but like solid that could be grown upon. Um, and then we kinda just blew up from there. I call it the post-COVID era, like, it just
Yeah.
kinda happened, like, it was, like, the perfect synergy of things, pieces landed, the new staff kinda came together, and it just kind of full tilt 180, and now we've been, I mean, we haven't looked back. It's been super awesome, to be a part of, but also just, like, to see where we were 3 years ago to now is just, like, insane. Um,
Yeah.
which, like, kudos to us, but also, like, the work was there, like, the foundation was there, we just had to get over the hump.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think part of what's fun too, especially like I think in general for people, like they hear Kansas basketball and they think of, like all the great games that have happened at Fog Allen and
Mhm.
like all of that. And I think one of the things that reframe would be the wrong way to put it, but like like Kansas was great in the '90s, but it's a building process to get back up. And obviously, Brandon had been here for a couple of years before you get in, and
Mm.
like you mentioned, things really took off. Um, but in terms of like that building process and getting up to that level that you guys wanted to be, um, what did you think kind of set that apart? Like, how did you kind of know, like, okay, this is a group that can really do some stuff and put things together? Because this is, I mean, you look at this last 2 year stretch, it's the best stretch that Kansas has had in a long time.
Yeah,
So how do you kind of like, did you kind of feel that right away? Like, okay, we can really do something with this, or was it more like it just kind of fed in over time?
I think, again, like, when I got here, like, me and Karila came in at the same time, Terry came in the year before us, so, like, we were relatively new together that year,
Hmm.
uh, but one thing that we sat down and we talked about was making sure, like, we're not gonna be the most talented group. Like, we know that, right? The Big 12 is a gauntlet, and we know we're gonna have to play Texas, you're gonna have to play OU, like, they're the high end is really high end. Baylor, like, you just know. So, where we're gonna have to separate and be able to compete at a higher level is, A, knowing everybody's on the same page and in it with 2 feet. B, the skill development and, like, actually developing players because we're not gonna get five-star kids, right? Like, we were 7 and 20. Like, we're not getting a five-star kid to come to Kansas at that moment, right? So you gotta make sure that they're workhorses, they're gonna be able to put the extra time in, but then their ceilings are high, and being able to really, like, set a premium on making players better individually, and then collectively as a group, and then, like, keeping those cornerstones in those 4, like, we have 4 pillars of our program, like, we're gonna we're gonna make this be what we're doing, like, this is who we are, this is what we're gonna be, and I think that off season, we did a team retreat, and we've been doing them ever since, but it was a huge culture shift, for our program, doing that and, like, really taking ownership of our team, and, like, we can go as far as we're gonna allow ourselves to go, and we had buy-in, and I think that again, like some of the kids that had been in the program that had been through some stuff, right? Like they've been through the hard, they've been through the not winning and still grinding it out and still getting better. Like Zakiah Franklin and Holly Kriskier, I use as my examples. Like they saw the worst of the program and got to experience the best of the program over their 5 years with COVID. But what they'll say is like the people and the buy-in was a big shift in their halfway through their experience where it wasn't just, hey, we're here, like we're trying to win, we're trying to get better, we're trying to compete. And some of that is recruiting, like some of that is bringing in other people that fit that mold and fit those things that we're talking about. But I really think like us as a staff having that synergy and being able to like show that to them and put that on display, and they know who we are and they know what we're saying isn't like they're not getting multiple stories, like it's a one message and you're getting it across the board from everybody and you know exactly what's expected of you, helped a lot in that trust and building that like, okay, like if we're going to take the next step we got to do this. And then you signed some Samaya Nichols because you made that step and you showed like this is exactly, we said what we were going to do and then we went and did what we said. Okay, now you sign somebody that believes in that because they see that, they see it play out. And then now you're 2 out of 3 NCAA tournaments, a WNIT in the middle. Like now you're doing what you said you were going to do. Can we make the next jump? Like that's, to me, that's the cool part about it is people are bought in, and what we are about is visible and tangible now. And it wasn't like that before.
Yeah. No, I love that. And especially we'll talk about Smile in a second, but I want to ask first because you and I guess this could probably end up talking about Smile too, but like not every coach, I think again, part of what sets you apart and why I like you just come out right away and say like, I like recruiting. A lot
I
of
love
coaches would
recruiting.
not say that.
I
So
love
like,
recruiting. Now, mind you, it's recruiting is a different beast now.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
the base of what recruiting is, I love it. Like you cannot, not a lot of people like it. I like it. It's fun. It's exhausting, but that doesn't mean it's not fun. I think it's fun. I like being able to get on the phone with somebody and like ask them how they were doing or like check in on their little siblings soccer games. Like I like doing that kind of stuff. Like having it in a little piece of their world and then them being able to see how you are, like then you know when you show up on campus you know exactly who I am. I'm not like, it's not any different, like it's the same. Like any kid on my team would be like, nope, this is exact, she's the exact same and she's still crazy, like it's still normal, this is her normal, this is her all the time.
No,
um
absolutely.
yeah.
No, I like that. It's really good perspective, and especially when you talk about like building those relationships and being able to sell what you guys have done.
Mhm.
Like, I think bringing in a player like Samaya, like that's the kind of player you need to build to the next level. She's a kid from Kansas. You're able to tell like, hey, this is what we're doing. This is where we're headed. And I think I mean, there were a lot of incredible freshmen this year. I feel like Samaya still went incredibly underrated in what she did. Like she had one of the best freshman seasons in Kansas history, which is pretty good. You talk about what she, especially with how you guys play, like watching.
Mhm.
I can't remember what was the tournament. Like I remember exactly who you guys played, but I can't remember what the tournament was called early on in the year, non-con.
The
But
Cayman
what?
Islands.
Yes, the Cayman
Cayman
Islands one.
Islands
Yeah,
gauntlet of a
it
tournament.
was
We
insane.
played freaking Virginia Tech
Virginia
and
Tech,
UConn,
UConn, like
and we
yeah,
played like we should have beat. I'm gonna say it. We should have beat Virginia Tech. We lose by 1 point in that game, and then I mean, Paige goes on a flurry. Paige goes on a flurry in the third, and we never got it back. So then it was like it was five. It was 5 points, 3 points, 5 points, 3 points against UConn. Like watching those games back, I'm like, we're going to be good. It just like it like we're gonna be good. We're gonna have some things not go our way because we
yeah,
have a freshman point guard. We have like inconsistencies, right? Like that happens. But yeah, no, I think she shows. I mean, you could probably look in the top 25 games, she was dominant. Like, I don't think she played poorly in one game where we played a top 25 opponent. Like, she was the real deal from the jump as a freshman and not scared at all. Obviously, we love her, but like, she really showcased like she's here, she needs to be respected. She's a lethal force, and like I again, I had the opportunity of watching her this summer, and I already think she's made strides in her game. And I'm very excited to see what her sophomore campaign looks like for everyone involved. And I think everyone will be less excited to play against her, but that's
Oh,
just me.
yeah, no, I can imagine. But I mean, exactly like going off that, I think so much of looking at this last year. Because I remember I hit you up after the UConn game. And I was like, I know that
Yes.
because after you guys finished up the tournament, I was like, I know that this like sucks to look at right now. But I was like, compared to like what you guys were doing, I was like watching this. I was like, I can see it, and
Yeah.
it really hit at the end of the year as you guys turned things around and kind of found that groove. What
Mhm.
did you think maybe set the end of the year apart? Like, what was kind of the differentiator? Like, I think part of it too, to be fair, like you guys played a gauntlet schedule that first 10 games, and especially like to open up Big 12 play as
Yeah.
well. But like,
What were we
finding
playing?
that groove again down the
What
stretch,
order?
I think you don't find that if you don't play the UConn and Virginia Tech early on in the year.
I
So,
agree.
what was kind of key in finding that down the stretch?
Yeah, I mean, we honestly, that's so true. Like our non-conference sucked so bad, and I know like some of that's our fault, and I get it. Um, and we thought, and like rightfully so, we thought, okay, like the year before they said our schedule wasn't strong enough when we thought we probably could have been in, and we go and win the NIT, fine, but like they're saying our strength of schedule was the reason we didn't get in. Let's make it non-negotiable. Like we played everybody. You can't say we ran away from anybody. We played them. Um, so again, that helped us. Our strength of schedule was really, really high, and we played really high competitive teams. Obviously, the Big 12 is a doozy when it comes to having some, which I thought we were criminally under, like talked about as a league this past year, and I think the seeding showed it. We had some teams that were better than their seeding and probably would have gotten further had they not been seated the way that they were. Um, and I'll just leave it at that.
I'll
Um,
just say it outright. West Virginia was seated way too low. I like hit
I'm
on
just
that
saying in
multiple times this
general,
year.
like
Yeah,
I
yeah, no,
thought,
I agree in general, but I just like West Virginia stands out immediately. I'm like, come on.
yeah, and even Iowa State, I'm like, there's no way. Like, don't get me started. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. We're going away from the having this many conferences, so maybe we won't have as many issues next year. Um, but I think again, like our team like made a decision. It was like mid-January, and we had taken a couple hits, and like we just weren't gelling, clicking. And in locker room, they decided like, hey, we competed against XYZ. We can do this. And then from us, like making the adjustment to really like making making sure that Samaya was our primary ball handler, decision maker. Like as a freshman, we probably should have done it, put the ball in her hands more, like in certain situation scenarios. And when we did move her to the primary PG position, because we played three point guards, honestly. Like Sakaya Franklin started for us at point at for multiple years of her career. Yvette Mayberry at the one. So like we had 3 point guards in our starting lineup. So when we moved her over, we lost, I think it was 3 games the rest of the year. Um, which again shows the level of her skill and ability, but also like it helped kind of tweak. Everyone was benefiting from her being the primary guy, like just making the decisions, being bigger, being able to see the plays before they happen. Everyone benefited from that. So to me, that was like a huge igniter. Like we did some, they did some. It was a little bit of a collective effort. And then they really just rolled. Like we really got hot, and it really felt like we could guard anybody. We do a really good job, and we pride ourselves in preparation of scouts. We're not like big time schemers, but when you play against us, you know you're going to have to do this, this, and this, because our ball screen defense is going to be this, this, and this, and it's going to be at a high level. And teams have to play differently against us because of it. And that's something we hang our hat on, and our team buys into 100%. Um, so yeah, that was a huge like turning point, but also like our team started believing in it, and then it was over. Like there was no doubt that we could beat Baylor. There was no doubt that like they felt like we could compete with the top, even though we hadn't shown it early. Like they're like, we can beat these teams, and then we did. So it was cool. I mean, I was so happy for them that we did, and we were able to like. I hate the 8-9 game. Everybody hates the 8-9 game, but it was a 1 point game. Like we cut it to one against USC, and then again Forbes and Juju go off in the fourth, and it's like, well, it's over.
Yeah.
It's guys like we don't have another kick. Like we have no more gas. They have two more tanks of gas. Like it's done. Um, but again, like that's where our program is. Like we're here now. Like, hey, second weekend. But both times we've played, we've been second weekend. How can we level up and make it out of the second weekend? Like, can we get there? Can we get to the Sweet 16? Like that's where we are currently, and that's what we're striving towards. We talk like, can we get to the Sweet 16? If we get to the Sweet 16, you can get to Elite Eight. Like, but you got to get out of that first weekend. And what does that look like? You got to handle your business. You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat, and then you got to sneak a couple. So that's the identity that we want. We're striving towards it. We're building towards it. But that team was very special in the sense that they got rolling late, and then once they were rolling, it was really hard to stop us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just kind of continuing on Samaya a little bit, like you mentioned, to close the last 15 games, including the tournament, 17 points per game, but was getting to the line 7.5 times.
Yeah.
And it stood out for her all year. But like her combination of strength and fluidity is like it's so tough to guard because like we talk about that game against Virginia Tech and
Mhm.
UConn, like you guys did a ton of just like matchup hunting with her, like using her as a screener, letting her attack out of like inverted stuff. And watching that, I was like, oh wow, okay, I'm just gonna love watching this player for a really long time. And
That's
part of
not gonna
what's so fun,
change. That's
I
not
know,
gonna
because
change,
I
by the
mean,
way.
yeah, going from that too, part of what I'm so excited about for this year, I love what you guys did in the transfer portal. I think you guys added quite a few players who are going to be beneficial to what you do, but especially like adding in the NDSU connection, like Elle Evans, who was phenomenal for NDSU in her freshman and sophomore years. Um, I didn't realize until I was prepping yesterday that you guys picked her up, and she is so good. She's almost a 50-40-90 kid last year.
Mhm.
Can run ball screens herself, is 6'3", a hell of a shooter, and brings a lot to like, especially as like a backline rotator on defense, which fits a lot of what you guys want to do. And again, I think like, when you look at coming off of a group that was this successful the last 2 years,
Mhm.
and you're trying to pivot into being, obviously you have some of the same pieces still. You have a star player that you're building around, but um, how do you kind of like blend those ideas together and towards taking that next step?
Yeah, I think what Brandon does a phenomenal job of is he's not just married to one thing. We decided in the off season, like what are we going to accomplish with the portal? What are we looking to do? When we struggled against teams, we didn't have enough length and perimeter shooting. Length really we were kind of small on the perimeter, and that we couldn't make post entry passes. We couldn't see, like, there are certain things that made it very, very difficult for us to complete action. And then having more consistent 3-point shooting around a pro style point guard. Um, that was the big thing, and I think we accomplished that. I would say even, like, through the course of the summer, I think all of us are like, "Well, I hope the goal is to shoot 35 threes a game because we really there's more space, more people can shoot, at multiple positions." You'll see us be a little bit more interchangeable. When you talk about being, like, matchup hunting, like, we're gonna be able to do a lot of that because of the pieces that we brought in. We might actually play faster, just based on the fives that we have because we're not 6'6" in the middle anymore. Which, like, I love Twin, love Tiana, but like now it's okay, we're gonna have to play a little bit different because those don't come walking down the street they're
Not at
not.
all.
They're not available. Like that's everybody. If you ask anybody what they want, they want a big. Great. Like awesome. So we'll be a little bit more mobile, we'll be a little bit more versatile at those spots. Um, but I'm very, very excited, like you said, like to see the development and growth of Samaya, but also from a we had 3 fifth-year seniors on our roster. Even just watching her come into her own as the leader, like the heartbeat of the team, and making sure that everyone is really like keyed in and locked in, like it's her team now. So like being able to watch that, grow that, foster that, and then watching like hurting sheep, but like we've got new faces. We've got 8 new faces with freshmen and transfers. How do they fit together? How do they jump in and go? And I think the standard of like we're coming in and we're working really, really hard has been set, and it's been so fun and so refreshing to be around that again, like you said, Elle, you're excited about Elle. I'm excited about Elle. Like she fits what we want to do, but also like versatility and how we can use her is going to be awesome because it's kind of like Samaya where you could pro post her because she's 6'3". Like there's some things you can do with the types of kids that we brought in, knowing that 3-point shooting was the baseline of like we need to add more of this. So our playmaker who can get downhill, why that Mayberry, even like Canessa's had a great summer with the Spanish teams. Like we're very excited about changing and adapting to what our personnel is asking us to do. Like, yes, we're still going to be a ball screen identity, but it's going to look a little different. It's going to look a little different, and I think you're going to like what you see.
Yeah, no, I'm stoked. And I could go on and on. Like, obviously, I think a lot of people got to see Sanaya Copeland play for Wisconsin. I'm excited to see her come over. Also, got to shout out Jordan Webster, though. Like, I
Mhm.
think, again, underrated pickup. I think one of the things, especially when you look at like more mid major, low major players, like, I think people look at box scores and they get like a little bit like, oh, well, the efficiency. I'm like, well, when you look at what Jordan was asked to do last year, I think I take what she did and I'm like, I'm imagining that playing off of Samaya and what you guys do. I'm like, I can't wait because
It's
just
simpler
really
than
good
saying,
wing scorer, super active on defense. Like that fits so much of what you guys want to do. So yeah, excited for
"Oh,
Kansas is the best way to
yay,
put it. But
yay, get
um,
excited, rock chalk, it's great."
exactly. But Morgan, I could take so much more of
I
your
know.
time up.
I was like,
But
"Hey, I we could do this all day. I could be here all day."
exactly.
It
But
really is not an issue.
yeah. Is there anything else you want to shout out before we get out of here? Anything you're looking forward to other than the time off coming up?
Well, what I will say is that we are in the middle of like a $50 million renovation of Allen Fieldhouse. So it is chaotic over here in Lawrence, but when the season starts and when we start get games rolling, like they're really doing it up. Like obviously it's still historic. The original rules, like that old feel is still going to be there, but it will be probably if it wasn't already bucket list items for people to come and see games, like it is next level. Even the renderings that we're seeing, some of the work that's kind of getting done, like we're supposed to be done by late night at the Fog, which Nelly is coming in for that. And that's a free event for the fans. And we do all the like late night festivities. They dance, they scrimmage, they do all the things. It's supposed to be done by then. So we're very, very excited. Like, please come on down to Allen Fieldhouse. And if it's not a men's game, the women's games are pretty live too. You can come on through. We've got a pretty good team.
Hey, watching the WNI, one of my favorite things about the WNIT is that it gets to be played there, and like seeing that game at Allen was sick.
Ooh,
I was so annoyed that I didn't get to be there because watching it back on
crazy.
Synergy, I was like, this looks pretty
It
good.
was
So
nuts. Like, the
yeah,
semifinal game, like the Mizzou game, we had a ton, and like it was like all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, this is a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday at 6 o'clock. This
yeah.
the Final Four game. We come in, and I know a staff from Washington, and they came up. They're like, our kids are freshmen. They are peeing their pants. They are not. We're trying to tell them that don't look around. Don't look at the banners. Don't look at the like all of this stuff. Like this is so cool. And she's like, I knew we were gonna lose at that point. Like just walking into the gym, I knew it was over. And then obviously almost 13,000 people, which it's so loud at 7 to 8,000 is really loud. Like you can't hear anything at 7 to 8, which like with the Big 12 games, like we've been getting more and more people. Like that's about the number for the top 25 games that come through. But the WNIT that was nuts. It was awesome. It was absolutely, and it was an incredible game. Like Columbia has come so far. They're so good, by the way,
Mhm.
so well coached. They do such a good job. But like, oh, and I was pumped when they made the tournament. We were freaking out. Like when their name got called, we were all like, yes, like it's just so awesome to see because again, we were playing against each other in the other tournament before. So like to see us both go NCAA this year was awesome.
Absolutely. Well, Morgan, I appreciate your time. To everyone watching, of course, keep up with all things Kansas. Be sure to follow Morgan on social media. And most importantly, have a great rest of your day. And thank you for listening.